Hello, basketball fans. We're talking hoops once again with Michael McCleary of the Argus Leader and me, Jason Andera, aka Jandy of Midco Sports. Michael, we are in the last week of the regular season for some teams. Um, these are different teams now than they were even a month ago.
Yeah, I was actually surprised looking at the schedule yesterday. Trying to figure out some of the best games for the rest of the month. I mean, things went fast with this season, and everybody's all these recent assessments I made of these teams are actually their end of season where they're trying to get to at the end of the season. So yeah, I'm excited for the playoffs to start soon.
Yeah, these last 2 weeks, I think we saw a lot of great matchups that kind of get us primed up. And now with that last week or so of the regular season, there's a couple more key matchups to talk about. What we're going to talk about today is some of the action over the last 7 days of high school basketball in South Dakota. And we'll also preview the next 7 days of high school basketball in South Dakota. And we always start in boys AA, and that's what we'll start again. Let's start out with, we're talking about O'Gorman. This is a team that's just lost 2 games on the year, both of them to Roosevelt. They beat Washington by 2 points last Friday night, and then they got a huge performance out of David Alpers Tuesday night to beat Harrisburg. They got a 30-point performance from him. This team's probably closer to the top than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, and I don't think we've ever seen a scoring performance like that from David Alpers this year. So, if that's an extra thing that he could unlock, this team is really versatile. I've loved how Rush Landry has played ever since they've lost Radley Monty for this season, who just received surgery on his to repair a torn ACL, and that went well. But yeah, I mean it. I just think there's so many options that this team has, and if they could unlock a little bit more from David Alpers down low from scoring perspective, I mean, it's hard to imagine many teams, if not the one team that they're still trying to catch, can keep up with them.
Yeah, I was impressed with the way Gavin Muirhead, who was a super role player earlier in the year, and now he's just a little bit stronger of a role player, coming down the stretch with a couple of 8-point games, a couple of huge dunks. He's added a lot. You mentioned Alper's 30-point performance. That added a lot. You mentioned Rush Landry, who defensively took out MK in the Washington game. He was on McKelly Kambalo the whole game and gave him fits. So a lot of different options on this O'Gorman team. And then we didn't talk much about Matthew Wang yet, their leading scorer, who we're both big fans of. So I think you're right. This O'Gorman team, even though they've lost twice to Roosevelt, I think they're right there with them. And speaking of Roosevelt, they played a close one with Lincoln last night. They had the lead most of the game, but again, just the theme with the Roosevelt Rough Riders, we're finding a way to win. And Lincoln, they're right on the cusp of competing with some of the best teams in the state right now.
Yeah, that was my takeaway from this game. I really like how Lincoln's been playing lately. They just got 29 points, I believe, last week from Elliott Whitney. That's a huge number for the junior. Yeah, I mean they've got obviously a ton of size, and their guards are really starting to come into their own. And I think they got defenders on the wing who could go up against some of those. A lot of the big time scorers in South Dakota are wing players. So, I think they got defenders that can match up with that. And, I really think this is a really well constructed team, and just took some time, but I really think they're getting there towards the end of the season.
Yeah, but Roosevelt's still unbeaten. They've got a couple games we'll talk about later in the show. And then Mitchell, they've lost 3 out of 4 now. They've had some impressive moments, but haven't gotten the big W's. Lost to Jefferson, barely lost to Roosevelt. And then, I say one bad quarter against Washington took them out on Tuesday night. But it was a great performance in the second half for them to be competitive. And Hinker, he really stepped up his game in the second half. But Washington, an impressive win for them with Anook Acott back as well.
Yeah, and teams are doing a good job lately of, keeping Caden Hinker's field goal percentage pretty low. He's obviously a big guy. He's got a really good touch.
Take a lot of shots.
Yeah, and that's it. to his credit, we talked about this last week too, where he didn't shoot great and still got 20 points. He had 25 on like 7 of 10 shooting this past game. I mean, he knows how to score, whether he's shooting well or not. But teams are really doing a good job limiting him, because imagine if he does shoot well and he's having that type of game. I mean, he could put up 30 in an instant. So, but I really like Washington. Obviously, you mentioned Kambalo being, he's maybe one of the most dynamic scorers in Class AA, if not all of South Dakota. And Nook Acott has looked really solid in limited minutes since he's come back. Obviously, they're probably trying to be pretty cautious with him coming off that injury, but he made a couple threes versus O'Gorman that it's just really impressive for someone of his size, and I can't wait to see when he's unleashed a little bit more.
Double A will be a lot of fun. A couple weeks left of that class. Let's move to boys Class A, and once again, it's Dakota Valley just making this look easier and easier as the season goes on. St. Thomas More coming in at number 2. Just a note on St. Thomas More, they held Hot Springs, a good team, to 20 points on Tuesday night. You talked about it the week before. They held DeSmet, even though they lost to them, to under 40. This is a team that it really can defend well.
Yeah, I've seen them play, I believe, twice now, and just watching them play defense is as entertaining as watching some of the best offensive teams in South Dakota play offense. They know how to defend. They're after every single ball. They're falling on the floor and recovering as somebody gets past them. I mean, it's just a really, really entertaining style of defense. And it's unlike really many teams I've seen this year, where I don't think I notice defense as much when I'm trying to pay attention to some of these offensive players, but you definitely notice defense when you watch St. Thomas More.
And how about Sioux Valley? We talked about this earlier this year, this out of the blue 30-point loss to Flandreau, and now an out of the blue loss to an unranked B team on Tuesday night, losing to Castlewood by, I think it was 5, between 5 or 7. It didn't come down to the last basket, let's put it that way. And the Cossacks moved down in the rankings once again. What do you make of that, Michael?
Yeah, I don't know. I've always been extremely high on the Sioux Valley team. I think Oliver Vincent is, one of the best players in the state. And he's been playing like it too. And I really think they have a good thing going with him and Alex Squires, who's having a good year this year. But I don't know, it's been up and down with them. And they've played some games where they look like a team that could potentially win a state championship. And then they've played some other games where, you take a loss where you just probably shouldn't have if you want to get to that point. So, I think that happens. It's basketball. There's ups and downs as it comes to it. But this late in the season, you want to be playing your best basketball. So you don't have these trip ups in a game that actually matters.
Yeah, I agree. I say don't count them out, but that's not a good look as you trend into the playoffs. They're going to have to turn things around. Hayden Rusink, another dynamic player for the Cossacks that at times has been able to take over. So I think Cossacks are a team that still has a shot at this thing, but might hurt their seeding a little bit. Let's take a quick peek at some of the competitive regions. Of course, you have to be a top 2 team in your region after the regionals to advance to the Sodak 16. They don't start until March. So some of these teams are done with their scheduled games as of the end of this week. They might have up to a week off to prepare. But looking at Region 1A, you've got Groton, who's had a solid season all year long. Clark-Willow Lake, who's played a lot of competitive games. And then you also have TS Bazina, a team that's coming on strong lately. Josiah Red Bear had a great game the other night to lead his team. They've got a really balanced scoring, but only 2 of those 3 teams are going to make it to the state tournament. Another one to look at is Region 3A, where West Central, that's a team that you just watched the other night. They're in charge right now at number 1, but you've got Sioux Falls Christian, Del Rapids, and Garrettson, all teams that could pose a threat to not only West Central, but to each other to make it to the tournament. Well, first of all, your impressions on West Central and Region 3.
Well, I'm a big fan of the way West Central plays. They got a ton of shooting, but you watch them for the first time and you think it's the shooting that really gets them, but they're just so deep, and they could shift five new players onto the floor and get just as much from player number 10 as you got from player number 1. And so they're constantly changing their lineups, running up and down the floor. They press, they run. They could shoot really well on the perimeter. Obviously, Dylan Jackson's a great shooter. Grafton Stroop is a great shooter. They got unbelievable production from Braden Herr yesterday, who hit maybe 3 threes in a row at just the biggest moments possible against Canton. And really, all season they've sort of struggled with injuries, and now they're really actually starting to get back to full form. Wilson Droge, who was out for the first couple games of the year with a foot injury, he scored like 21 against Clark Willow Lake, and then he went out for another 4 games after that. So they've really been struggling with injuries, but they're just so deep, so they've still been able to maintain their run. So as they get to full strength, I really think this is a team that could potentially win a state championship when it's all said and done.
There you go. Strong take from Michael McCleary. I like it. Let's move to Region 4A, where you've got Dakota Valley, Lennox, who lost to T the other day, and they still have a couple tough games left. T area is right in the mix there, and then Vermilion has had some impressive wins as well. So 4 solid teams, I think, in Region 4A, where you're just going to find 2 of those teams. So that's going to be a huge struggle to get to the Sodak 16. And then in Region 8, we got a lot of competitive teams. You got St. Thomas More, we probably think is going to punch their ticket. But after that, Rapid City Christian, Hot Springs, Belle Fourche, it's going to be quite a race between those 3 teams to punch that last ticket. And of course, it comes down to matchups, and you don't want to be that 4 seed taking on St. Thomas More. So we'll see how the seeding comes down in Region 8. So all those regions going to be exciting as we come down the stretch. Let's move to Boys B now, and same thing here. First of all, just a shout out to Kaylin Gary, 2,000 career points. What is there, 41 people, I think, who have done that on the boys' side in state history. You get into pretty rare air when you're hitting 2,000 career points, Michael.
Yeah, that's really tough. I definitely couldn't have done that.
So shout out to him. But when I look at some of the competitive regions in B, it's the same way. This one starts February 28th, and you've got DeSmet, who's probably going to punch their ticket in 3B. But then Castlewood on fire lately. Wolsey Wessington's been a strong team, and even a team like Estline Hendricks, I think, could pose some problems. So I look at DeSmet's region, and I see that there are some potential things to look at. I did want to comment while we're on Class B, though. You've had a chance to watch a couple of these teams. Lower Brule, you had a chance to watch at the Classic, at the DW Classic the other week. Any other comments on Class B from you, Michael?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was probably the Class B team that I was most excited to watch, Lower Brule, just because they've been in the rankings pretty much all year. They've only have a couple blemishes on their resume at this point, and I don't know, they're really entertaining. Like, they play really fast. I think Kasham Thai is a really good player. He could shoot, he could get to the basket. He's a very big guard. Lower Brule classifies them as sort of a scrawny, small team. That was the quote. But they got some size at the guard position in a way that not a lot of teams have. So, I think they could pose a matchup problem, even though they don't have that big. Pretty similar to another team that I've, come to enjoy watching play, Potter County. Grant Lukens had 30 the other day to go along with Cooper Logan's 25. I mean, when those two score a combined 55 points, I mean, there's not many duos in Class B that could really match up with that. You'd probably have to go to DeSmet to find something like that. And even then, they're a really good team, and they've found themselves in the rankings recently. They've been rising up. There's a lot of really good teams in Class B, but Lower Brule and Potter County are 2 that I point out as teams that are a bit under the radar for at least how good I think they could be.
Yeah. Aberdeen Christian, another one we're going to be talking about later in the show, as we have David Rohrbach on. You have him as a guest later in the show, and that's a team that's moved up the rankings up to number 3 now. They had a big win against Howard at the DWU Classic. So a lot of fun stuff going on in Class B right now. Let's move to girls basketball. We have girls AA action. We had a 1-2 battle last Friday night, and Washington's only loss came to O'Gorman. O'Gorman's only loss came at the beginning of the year. And I'll tell you what, the first half in this, O'Gorman couldn't shoot. Is that just because they were in a slump, or did Washington put the heat on them, Michael?
Yeah, I don't know. It's obviously Washington, the last game they played against O'Gorman was the one who had the fast start. And the fast start was the thing that really, really kind of destroyed Washington's chances of getting back into this game. But once obviously that was a talking point in practice where they wanted to get out to a fast start and they wanted to be fast. They wanted to play fast the way that they do. But once Washington got a little bit of a lead, they started kind of slowing down the pace, controlling things, really not allowing O'Gorman to play within their offense. So a lot of credit definitely goes to Washington. I don't think it was the best night for O'Gorman. I think they could play better than what they did. But at the same time, Washington did a really good job of, once they got a lead, just making sure that they do not lose control of this game. So, Washington's a good team. O'Gorman's a good team. This could have gone either way, and Washington just happened to strike first.
Definitely not an excuse, but that Friday night game, Hannah Ronsick, she had been sick on that Tuesday prior. She came back and played on Thursday, so she had a back-to-back game off of being sick, and you could tell her shot just wasn't there in the first half. I don't know whether it was energy or just bad luck, but you're right, though. How much do you credit Washington? How much was an off night by O'Gorman? I think you got to give a lot of credit to Washington because, they came out and played Tuesday night against Mitchell and absolutely destroyed them. And Mitchell's a team that was, not a top 5 team, but they were coming up the ranks a little bit. And for Washington to play the way they have, I think they're peaking. And I think this is a very dangerous girls basketball team right now. So a lot of fun to watch those two. And I just get this feeling that we're going to see those two again. Maybe Rapid City Stevens has something to say about it, but it really feels like those are your top 2 teams in AA right now. Let's move to Girls A. And in Girls A, again, a little sneak peek at some of the competitive regions. Their regions start next Monday already. And many of these teams are done with their regular season. Some of them have 1 game left to go. But again, looking at Region 4, Dakota Valley, Vermilion, T-Area, and even Lennox. Lennox, maybe not the team that you think of it, but they look like a team that can hang with some good teams. Maybe not quite enough firepower to get it done, but T-Area is another fun team that they've really challenged themselves with a tough schedule this year. And I think their record sometimes doesn't accurately reflect how good they are. And then with Katie Vasika, I think that's a team that, could pose some problems. And I think that's one region that you really have to look at with Vermilion playing better, Dakota Valley playing well, and T-Area. I'm looking forward to seeing how that one shapes out.
Yeah, I think it's just incredible. Just looking at the rankings right now, just having watched Dakota Valley a couple weeks ago, to see them not even really receiving votes is just incredible to me. It just, I don't think that says really much about Dakota Valley as much as it says that just Class A is just absolutely loaded in girls basketball. Like it's similarly loaded in boys basketball, but girls basketball is just on a different level. There's at least 10 to 12 teams that are, really, really solid teams.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I look at Hamlin, for instance, and I had them ranked personally at 3, and they're not in the top 5 right now. Lakota Tech with just 1 blemish on the year. Dakota Valley has played tough. Sioux Falls Christian is a team I have to mention here. I'm going to pull up their schedule here in a second, but the losses that they have on the year to Wagner, number 1, Unity Christian, who's a 20-1 team in Iowa, and West Central, the number 2 team. And that's it. They've beaten everybody else on their schedule. I don't know what else they have to do to prove it, but those are teams we don't talk about a lot, but this class is going to be crazy in the playoffs. And that's why I'm really looking forward to these regions and seeing who survives. And speaking of another tough region, Region 5, you got Wagner, who's one of the favorites. But then after that, Parkston has been solid all season long. MVP with Emily Fox has been a team that's shown they can play with anybody. Hanson has upset some teams bigger than them. And then you even have Andes Christian, Dakota Christian, and Sanborn Central Woonsocket have both been teams that have shown they can play with anybody. And you got all those teams in Region 5, only 2 get to go to the SODAC 16. That's one of the regions I'll really be keeping a close eye on. All right, let's look at Region 4 as well. That's another region. I'm going to pull it up here in a second. Region 4B, you've got Coleman Egan is a team that early in the year, I think a lot of people thought was maybe one of the better teams in Class B. They took a few losses and people have forgotten about them. But Ethan early on was a team that people were ranking. Howard is a team that's shown they can play well. And Bridgewater Emory, again, another team that has showed they can play well. So that's another really tough region to look at to see who's going to survive and make it to that SODAC 16. But overall in Class B, it's been a lot of fun. Ron Colley really established himself with that big win last week. But after that, DeSmet moves up to number 2 as Corsica Stickney drops a game and moves down to number 3. And then White River, another shout out to Malia Estes, who hit her 2,000th career point. I think they're a team that belongs in the mix as well. And, Aberdeen Christian, another one with 2 6-footers that can do a lot of different things that belong in the conversation too. All right, you had the chance to bring on our guest coach this week, Michael. Who did you pick?
Yeah, so I got to see the first half of Aberdeen Christian's game against Howard, and I was really impressed as always with the Knights. So I called upon David Rohrbach to tell me a bit about the team that has been playing really well this year, and seems to be playing its best basketball towards the end of the season. Hey, David, how are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So obviously you guys have been off to a really good start this year. I guess what's sort of been the keys behind your success now?
Yeah, we bring back a really experienced group. I think it's the first time in our school's history that we start all upperclassmen. We don't have a senior on the roster, but we start all juniors, and then our 6th man's a junior. We play a couple of sophomores off the bench. Just having that experience, and those juniors have all gotten playing time. Obviously we're on the team that made a deep run last year. So just having that experience to bring back has really helped. And then, obviously just having that, and then the guys being so willing to just get after it, work hard. They put in so much work, in the off season, in the summer, working on their own game, playing on AAU teams, and just in the gym on their own. That you just have to have that, and then they just buy in every day, getting after it on the defensive end. Defense has kind of always been our staple. So just their willingness to get after it day in and day out, for sure.
Having such a young team last year coming into this season, what were some of your expectations for what you could do this year, and some of your expectations for the next 2 years in the future?
Yeah, obviously expectations are high. Anytime you make a run like we did last year and you bring back that much talent, and starters and guys that contributed, obviously expectations are going to be pretty high. But the guys embraced it. They wanted those expectations to be high. The biggest thing is you just try to focus, the coach cliche, but you try to focus every day, and just bring your best to practice, and focus every game. Especially with the seed points the way they are, they matter so much. Every game matters. And you just try to set yourself up to, position yourself for the postseason as best as possible.
That Howard team was, rising a little bit coming into that matchup. I guess, what did you see from your team in that game where you guys were able to get such a big win?
Yeah, they're long. They got some athletes, and they do some real good stuff. And I thought our guys put together a pretty complete game. We made it really difficult on their post, who's a real good athlete, and can pose some matchup problems. I thought we made it really difficult on him. And I thought that, I thought we passed the ball really well. Obviously, we shot the ball well that game, which really helps, when they play a zone. But I just thought that we moved the ball well. I thought we got contributions from multiple guys. And I thought that we put together a pretty strong defensive game as well, for 4 quarters, which was nice because we've kind of had games where, we'll start slow or, have lulls in different quarters. But I thought it was good as we get down towards the end here to play a good team and put together, for the most part, 4 quarters.
Obviously, it came against two really difficult teams, but your only 2 losses of the season came consecutively. So I guess how different is your team, coming off of those losses, where you are now based on where you were then?
Yeah, no, really good question. Obviously two really good teams, in White River and then the Memphis Tennessee team. Our biggest thing was we wanted to get better after those games. You have to use those games because great teams will show you what you don't do well, and we wanted to utilize those games to improve and make us better, and show us what we need to improve to get better shots, to get people open, and where we need to get better on the defensive end. So that was our biggest goal when we looked at those games in film. And we made a conscientious effort to meet with the guys and talk about that. And we hope that, obviously it wasn't fun, losing back to back, especially early on in the season. But I think in the long run, it made us better. And that's what we're very hopeful of. And I think it'll pay dividends in the long run for sure. And that's why you like to go to classics like those where you play really good teams early on for sure.
Obviously, White River is one of those teams that just right above you in the poll. I guess, what are some of the steps that your team has made just to make that extra jump where, you're a good team, but you can beat those teams that maybe you took losses to at the beginning of the year?
I think we're a more confident bunch. I think early on, it was, just a few guys were getting just a major bulk of the shots. And now we're seeing major contributions from kind of everybody, and it just depends on the game where, we still have our couple of 3 leading scorers, typically, but we're getting a lot more contributions from, our other 2 starters. They're consistently hitting shots and they've really found their roles as well, just how they can impact the game, and the guys really trust each other a lot more now. So I think that, just that piece of trusting each other that is built, and learning how to play with each other, is built throughout the year. That piece has really come together. And I think we've gotten better on the defensive end, for sure. And just, found our identity a lot more since then.
Just to name some names, who are some guys who took some major steps this year?
Yeah. The 2 guys that have filled starting roles from last year, Caden Clark, just off the top for sure. He's been awesome defending the post this year and just giving us, he's one of those guys that gives us anything we need on any given night. And he's finds guys all the time, for assists, as a post player. He's one of the best passers and just does all the little things, but can also score. But he might just score 6 a game, 4 a game, 8 a game. Sometimes he, I think the most he's had is 10 or 12, but he's always gets timely buckets and just an unselfish player. And then Andrew Brendan, who's kind of our, he's that other guard, sometimes he'll play the point, sometimes he'll kind of play the off guard, and just does all the little things. He's just a workhorse, and he likes to pick other guys up full court, brings energy for us. Really found his role in finding guys open. And then he's really found his rhythm. He's starting to hit threes when he's open. And he's just really found a nice niche with the guys, and they're trusting him as well. So it's been nice.
Obviously, the playoffs are soon. What are some of the things you're looking forward to as you start to get into the postseason?
The season can be a grind in the middle of the year, and you really want to start, once you feel like you've, put everything in you can, and you not reached where you want to be, but once you feel like you're close to being ready, you really want to get to the postseason and just, it can be a grind. And at some point you're just kind of ready, like, all right, let's get to the playoffs and let's start getting to the meaningful games. And I think the guys are excited for it. And obviously when you've, been to state and stuff, obviously it's hard to not look forward to that, every year, but, at least look forward to the playoffs, and you want to try to make that your run. So obviously your eyes are always, it's this contradiction of you're always focused day in and day out, but yet your eyes are always set towards, making yourself better to try to make as deep as run as possible. So I think the guys really want to get to the playoffs, and we're excited to be a couple of weeks away from it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, David.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
So this is the time of the show we talk about big games coming up. We just talked to boys hooper David Rohrbach, but we're going to switch speeds to girls hoops because there's not much left in girls hoops. There's just these last couple of days, and we got some interesting games to talk about. Ron Colley takes on Aberdeen Christian on the girls' side. This is a huge opportunity for Aberdeen Christian to notch one on the map on Thursday. And another great matchup in Class A, Hamlin takes on Florence Henry. Florence Henry actually has 2 games this week yet to really prove themselves. As we just talked about how packed Class A is, we didn't mention Florence Henry. They have a chance to mention themselves among the best too. And then Saturday, we've got Jefferson and Lincoln. So we talk a lot about the top 5 teams in AA, but this is the 6 and 7 teams, and that could be interesting for seeding. I've watched Jefferson a little bit. They've improved throughout the year. They're getting more and more solid. Lincoln, too, though, has also found their groove. I think this is two very similar teams kind of jockeying for that number 6 position. So let's look at some of the big games in girls hoop. And then starting next Monday and Tuesday, we've got regional matchups. The first round usually not quite as interesting as that second round, but we'll keep you up to date when we come back on next week to talk more about girls regional hoops. In boys hoops, T-Area continues to test themselves against AA competition. Thursday, they'll take on Yankton. They just played Brandon the other night. They've played several AA teams. And then some really interesting AA matchups. Washington at Roosevelt, Lincoln at Jefferson. What do you make of those 2 games, Michael?
Well, Lincoln Jefferson is really interesting because 2 teams that are really just trying to establish themselves at the end. I think Jefferson started to really hit their stride maybe about a week before Lincoln did. And now Lincoln's starting to really get into a groove now. So I think it's really interesting. Obviously, it's always interesting when, the fringe team near the top gets a shot at the number 1 team. But, having those 2 fringe teams in the top 5 kind of battle each other, that's always really telling as well. So, and then Washington at Roosevelt, I think Washington's a different team than it was a couple weeks ago with Anoke Akot back in the lineup. I mean, I think they have a chance that once he starts to get a little bit more into a groove, that they could match up with some of those top teams. So this will be a great early test for that.
Yeah, Washington playing some really good ball right now. Barely lost to O'Gorman in the O'Gorman gym, and then played a good game against Mitchell. So they've had a couple ranked teams lately, and they have another big ranked team, of course, number 1 undefeated Roosevelt in the Roosevelt gym on Friday night. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Another game Friday night, Lennox takes on Del Rapids. Del Rapids, one of those teams that's not getting talked about in the rankings, but I think they could still have an effect on how things unfold. And Lennox needs a big win as well after their loss to T last week. So that will be a lot of fun. Saturday, another city game between Washington and Jefferson. And I think it's kind of similar here. This is time to show that you're peaking at the right time. I think one of those 2 teams is going to hit their stride coming in to the playoffs, and this game could go a long way deciding that. And then next Monday and Tuesday, a couple fun ones as well. Lower Brule, a Class B team, taking on Sioux Valley, and Sioux Valley is trying to get a get-right game before the playoffs start for them, and that's a huge challenge when they'll take on Kisham Thai and company at Lower Brule. That'll be at the gym at the Cossacks' place. And then Tuesday, Roosevelt tests themselves once again, and this could be for an undefeated season at that point, or at least an undefeated regular season. They'll take on another ranked team, Aberdeen Central, who's starting to move back up the rankings themselves. So I'm looking forward to a lot of great games here coming up in the next 7 days. Michael, what do you got planned with the Argus in the next week or so?
Well, I was obviously at West Central, at Canton yesterday to see some West Central Canton games, but upcoming in the week with the weekend, I got Jefferson Lincoln. We talked about that game a couple minutes ago. Obviously, really good matchup. Cross city matchup. You always like that. So yeah, so that's going to be a big game, and I'm really excited for that.
At Midco Sports, we don't have any more live high school games, but yeah, we'll have some fun stuff coming up in the next few days. So make sure to follow us, and we'll give some coverage and previews coming for some of the region action coming up over the next few days. It's been fun once again. We did it, Michael, and next week we'll talk playoff hoops. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.